Depending. Oh yeah, cause
Okay. The north wind and the sun were disputing which was the stronger. When a traveller came along, wrapped in a warm cloak, they agreed that the one who first succeeded in making the traveller take his cloak off should be considered stronger than the other. Then the north wind blew as hard as he could, but the more he blew, the more closely did the traveller fold his cloak around him. And at last, the north wind gave up the attempt. Then the sun shined out warmly, and immediately the traveller took off his cloak. And so the north wind was obliged to confess that the sun was the stronger of the two. Nope. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Okay, I think the moral of story is the approach in doing things. So for Northwind, he adopt a more aggressive approach. So it's like try to force the traveler to take off his cloak. So he keep blowing wind, kind of a strategy to let the cloak fall off the traveler. But the sun used a much more mm, smart tactic, which is shining warmly on the traveler. So the traveler willingly to take off his cloak because of the weather. So Northwind should maybe when we do things we should think out of our approach whether you want to do a more aggressive approach or a more tactful approach. Yeah. Okay. I'm writing this because I have no choice. I like to say it is a warning to others, but I have more selfish reasons. Even if I did warn you, I doubt that you will hit it, as I did not hit the warning left for me. I must not waste time, as time is wasting me, in a way that defies the medical science I once believed I knew. My joints ache as I write, and soon I know I will be unable to continue. Yet this must be told, and so I write on. I'm a doctor here at Rosewood Lodge, and I'm 27 years old. I look, although I look older, and by the time you read this, it will be scarcely possible for you to imagine me as I was yesterday. Before me, Rosewood had no resident doctor. This was my first big break, away from the hospital where I trained and qualified. At the interview, I pretty much said I work for anything, so they snapped me up. Rosewood is a residential care home for elderly patients, some of whose care needs has started to become more advanced than those which a nursing home can ordinarily provide. The board had decided that, rather than paying out for consultants and continually dealing with emergencies, it made better economic sense to have someone like me on the payroll. It was, in short, an excellent job, relaxed but responsible, challenging but manageable, and the money was good enough for me to get my own flat finally. The home is essentially three stories of self-contained flats, divided into three wings, A, B, and C on each floor. Some residents were less flats and more rooms, without locks and without any real facilities of their own. The nurses and social workers tended to stay away from me, as I was still an outsider to them, and they had the run of the place, working with the residents each day, whereas I would only see them if they were you. One thing that I did not pick up from my colleagues, however, was the strange warning about the man in room 17, on the end of wing B on the second floor. The ridiculous thing about that particular warning was the numbers on each ring only go up to 16. The nurses tend to act strangely about it, saying that if ever there was a room 17, I'll be better off not going in. I saw no harm in laughing along with it at the time, and I quickly forgot all about it. Until the day I happened to be in Bing Wing on the second floor, and noticed a room I hadn't seen before. I had been at Rosewood for 3 days, and it was late. I'd been tending to a particularly unwell man in a room along the corridor, who needed a lot of attention. I was considering referring him to a hospice in the morning, if after I studied his charts I decided that they would be better placed to take care of for him. So I wasn't really in a good frame of mind as I left his room and turned to make my way to the stairs. I don't know if it was my mood or the lateness of the hour, but something made me stop. I felt a tingle at the back of my neck, a creeping sense of something not right. I turned. How wish I had not. I wish I had kept on along the brightly lighted corridor, down the stairs, and back to my office. Instead, I looked back along the hall to where a flickering overhead light cast dark shadows over the far wall, highlighting the still edges of the window looking out into the blackness beyond. Glimpsed for moments at a time in that uncertain light was a door that should not have been there. I knew it should not have been there, and I did recall the warning, but truthfully I was too intrigued and too steadfast in my belief in science and rationality to ignore it. I approached it, curiosity overcoming my incredulity. I did not feel even the faintest stirrings of my fear until my fingers touched the handle beneath the elegantly carved number 17. It was deathly cold, and I put back my hand with trepidation, cursing myself for a foolish child and beginning to believe it was all some kind of prank by the nursing staff. I glanced up at the ceiling, half expecting to see a camera propped up somewhere. They thought that perhaps I was being made a fool, stilled my resolve, and wrapping my hand in my sleeve, I opened the door. For a moment I was stunned. It was one thing to make a prank door, quite another to make it open, and beyond lay a room that I knew had not existed an hour before. Inside was a residential room like any other, a small kitchenette along one wall to the right, next to a door to a small bathroom, a coffee table and a TV along the left, a bed stretched along the far wall beneath large windows, and a sofa set facing the TV. Poking out above the sofa, I could just about see the top of an old man's head. Wisps of grey hair draped across the ladder. I should have run. I should have quit. I should have obeyed those instincts which keep us all sane and alive. But I made a lifetime out of understanding and reason, and I was determined to find what was happening. I approached the old man, the scent of old medicine and unwashed bodies thick in the air. I had the impression that he had not been disturbed for a very long time. Only a faint wheezing raps indicated that he was breathing. Milky blue eyes widened in the withered and lined face as I came into view, and the old man's fingers rested along the leather chair's arms, twitched slightly. His mouth moved a little, and his breathing became a rattle, as though he was trying to speak. I had the impression that he was agitated, by my presence or by something else I could not tell, but that he was also powerless to move. I sat down on a footstool by his chair, running through diagnosis in my head as I took in the pallor of his skin. The thin, cracked lips, the struggling fingers, he seemed to be dehydrated, weak, and wasted through the muscle atrophy. And yet he was clothed and appeared not to have soiled himself. Someone must have been looking after him then, perhaps one of the nurses? Had they been keeping him here, a secret only revealed by some accident? The man's eyes drifted to a book lying on the coffee table and seized upon it, glancing back to me only in the short furtive motions. Intuing that he wanted it, I picked it up. A thin leathery tome with the date 1916 written upon it in spidery letters, and placed it on his knees. He stared at me, back at the book, then at me. So I picked it up again and turned to the last entry of what was clearly a diary.